Hello, and thank you for tuning into AI Storytime. Sit back and enjoy, John the Assassin. John was a seasoned assassin, with a long list of successful hits under his belt. No one knows John's last name anymore, not even John himself. Some might think this would be a hindrance in life, but John uses it to his advantage. No last name means it is much harder to trace him. The years of dangerous work have taken a toll on his body, and his once smooth skin was now crisscrossed with scars. He walked with a slight limp, a reminder of a near-fatal gunshot wound sustained on a job gone wrong. Despite the physical hardships, John remained a formidable figure, with piercing blue eyes and a quiet, confident demeanor. He moved stealthily, like a predator stalking its prey, and his voice was low and gravelly, with a hint of threat always lurking. Those who crossed him quickly learned to fear his deadly efficiency and cold, calculated nature. John walked into the dimly lit bar, his black clothing blending into the shadows. He scanned the room, his eyes narrowing as he spotted his target sitting at a corner table. He strode over, his boots thudding against the wood floor, and took a seat across from the man. The man, a wealthy businessman with slick hair and a tailored suit, looked up at John with a mixture of fear and respect. He knew of John's reputation, and it was clear that he was intimidated. "You're the one they call John, right?" the man asked, his voice shaking slightly. John nodded, his expression impassive. "That's right. You have a job for me." The man nodded, licking his lips nervously. "I do. It's a high-paying job, but it's also very risky. Are you up for it?" John leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed over his chest. "I'm always up for a challenge. Tell me more." The man hesitated for a moment before launching into the details of the contract. John listened intently, his mind already working on the best approach for the job. When the man was finished, John leaned forward, his eyes locked onto the man. "I'll take the job," he said, his voice cold and decisive. "But I'll need half the payment up front." The man swallowed hard but nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a stack of bills, sliding them across the table to John. John counted the money before pocketing it, his eyes never leaving the man's face. "I'll be in touch when the job is done," he said, standing up. He gave a curt nod and turned to leave, his silhouette disappearing into the darkness. John had been stalking his target for days, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. She was clearly wealthy, and the contract on her life had come with a hefty price tag. John had no qualms about taking out a target for money, but something about this job didn't sit right with him. As he watched the woman from afar, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. She seemed genuinely kind and compassionate, and he couldn't understand why anyone would want her dead. The night of the hit, John found himself hesitating as he aimed his gun at the woman. He couldn't bring himself to pull the trigger, and in that moment of hesitation, the woman turned and looked directly at him. Their eyes locked, and John was startled by the depth of emotion he saw in her gaze. In that moment, he knew that he couldn't go through with the hit. He lowered his gun and turned to leave, knowing that his decision would have consequences. The woman was a sight to behold. She was tall and slender, with long, flowing red hair that cascaded down her back in waves. Her skin was pale and flawless, and her deep green eyes shone like emeralds. She was dressed in a sleek black evening gown that hugged her curves in all the right places, and a string of pearls adorned her neck. Her name was Madison, and she was the CEO of a successful tech company. She had been working late at her office, poring over financial reports and strategizing for the coming year. As she gathered up her things to leave, she had no idea that someone was watching her from the shadows. Despite her high-powered job and stunning looks, Madison had a warm and compassionate nature. She was known for her charitable work and her dedication to making the world a better place. It was this kindness that made John hesitate to carry out the contract on her life, and ask the question again, who and why would someone want her dead? After sparing Madison's life, John knew that he couldn't just walk away. He was drawn to her in a way that he couldn't explain, and he knew that he had to protect her at all costs. He followed her from a distance, making sure that she was safe and keeping an eye out for any other threats. As he got to know Madison better, he found himself falling for her. She was smart, strong, and fiercely independent, and he admired her deeply. But he also knew that he couldn't be with her. He was an assassin, with a long list of enemies and a dangerous reputation. He couldn't bring her into that world, no matter how much he cared for her. "I can't do this," he muttered to himself, pacing back and forth in his safe house. "I can't keep pretending that I'm just watching out for her. I want to be with her, but I can't risk her safety." Despite the risk, John couldn't stay away. He found himself drawn to Madison time and time again, and he vowed to keep her safe at all costs. He decided it would be necessary to take out the people who had hired him to kill her, determined to protect her future. "I have to do this," he said, his voice laced with determination. "I can't let anything happen to her. She doesn't deserve to die. Time to find out what's going on." As John set out to find out who had hired him to kill Madison, he knew that it was a dangerous mission. He had a long list of enemies, and he couldn't be sure who was behind the contract. He spent hours at his safe house, poring over his notes and trying to piece together the clues. "I have to figure out who's behind this," he muttered to himself, pacing back and forth. "There has to be a reason someone wants Madison dead. And I have to find out who they are before it's too late." John dug deep, using all of his resources and connections to uncover the truth. He tracked down leads, hacked into secure databases, and even went undercover to gather information. It was a risky endeavor, but one that he was willing to undertake for Madison's sake. Finally, after weeks of tireless work, John was able to piece together the puzzle. It turned out that Madison's tech company was on the verge of releasing a groundbreaking new product, and a rival corporation was willing to do anything to stop her. They had hired John to take her out, hoping to derail her company and gain the upper hand in the market. "I can't believe it," John said, shaking his head in disbelief. "All of this, just for a stupid business deal. These people have no morals." Determined to protect Madison and her company, John set out to take down the rival corporation. He knew that it wouldn't be easy, but he was willing to do whatever it took to keep Madison safe. The night was dark and stormy, with rain pouring down in sheets. John knew that the cover of the storm would be perfect for his mission. He had spent weeks tracking down the key players in the rival corporation, and tonight was the night to take them out. He slipped through the shadows, his black clothing blending into the darkness. He was armed with a silenced pistol and a handful of throwing knives, and he was ready for anything. The first target was a high-ranking executive, holed up in his luxurious penthouse apartment. John made his way to the building, using the rain to cover his movements. He climbed up to the penthouse and slipped through the window, his eyes scanning the room for his target. The executive was sitting at his desk, his back to John. John moved silently across the room, his gun at the ready. Just as he was about to pull the trigger, the man spoke. "I knew you would come," he said, his voice laced with hatred. "I knew that you wouldn't be able to resist her. I hoped you would do the job and not ask questions. Wanted you to prove me wrong, told them hiring you was a mistake. Offered to do the job myself, but I wasn't a trained assassin as they put it. They said you would do what you were hired for, hired the wrong guy apparently." John hesitated to pull the trigger, the voice was familiar, and he quickly dashed forward before the man could turn around. Shoved the man's face into the table and put the gun to his head. With his finger still hovering over the trigger, he knew this man was evil and that he deserved to die. "You're the one from the bar, you hired the right person, just not the right job. Now, why is she wanted dead? Is it really just the money? Is there nothing else important to you people?" he asked, his voice low and deadly. "Why damn it, give me a reason to let you live." The executive sneered, turning to face John, gun still in his face and John's hand tight around his neck. "It's simple. She was a threat to our company. We couldn't let her new product succeed. We had to take her out." John's grip on the gun tightened, and he knew that he couldn't let this man live. He stopped thinking and did what he came here for. He pulled the trigger, silencing the executive forever. And with that, the first target was eliminated. John crept through the hallway, his eyes scanning for any sign of danger. He knew that he was getting close to his targets, and he had to be ready for anything. As he rounded a corner, he spotted two guards standing at attention outside a door. They were heavily armed, and John knew that he couldn't take them on in a direct confrontation. He reached into his pocket and retrieved a pair of throwing daggers, weighing them in his hand. He had to take out the guards quickly and silently, and this was the only way. With a flick of his wrist, John launched the daggers at the guards. They flew through the air, striking their targets with deadly precision. The guards crumpled to the ground, their weapons clattering against the floor. John moved quickly, retrieving his daggers and slipping into the room. His targets were within reach, and he was ready to finish the job. John burst into the room, his gun at the ready. He knew that this was it, the final showdown. The man in charge, John, was standing at the far end of the room, his eyes narrowed in hatred. "It's over, John," the man sneered. "You can't stop us. We'll find another way to take out Madison." John stepped forward, his eyes locked onto the man. "I'm not going to let that happen," he said, his voice cold and steady. "I won't let you or anyone else harm her, just for your greed. You're pathetic." The man laughed, reaching for his own gun. "You think you can take me down? You're just a hired gun, John. You didn't have the guts to kill her and you don't have the guts to do what needs to be done now either." John didn't respond. Without hesitation, he simply pulled the trigger, silencing the man forever. As the man's body crumpled to the ground, John felt a sense of satisfaction wash over him. He had done the right thing, protecting Madison, and bringing down the rival corporation. "It's done," he said to himself, holstering his gun. "Madison is safe, and these people will never hurt anyone again." As he left the building, John knew that he had made the right decision. He had chosen love and morality over money, and he was at peace with that. He couldn't be with Madison, not with the danger and secrets that surrounded him. But at least now, someone else could. Someone who could love and protect her the way she deserved. With that thought, John vanished into the night, ready to move on to the next chapter of his life. The end. Hope you enjoyed.